Hello, Medfield. Thank you for watching Medfield TV. You're going to get the newest edition of watching Mike Sullivan, the town administrator, talk about goings-on at Town Hall and all through the whole town of Medfield. So Mike will give us an update about what's coming at town meeting, what's coming generally, and what you'll be voting on pretty soon. So let's hear from Mike.
And the best thing that's coming is spring.
Are you sure?
Only 21 days, so it better come. Better show
let's
up.
hope.
So, yeah, well, town meeting is fast approaching. The town election is only about 4 weeks away, and although there's only one contested race, I understand the school committee race is the only contested race.
And the two contenders are?
There's Mary Ann Sullivan is the incumbent.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a gentleman by the name of Bain, B-E-H-N, I believe his last name spelled, who's running, and I believe he's is with the Newton School Department, I think.
Oh.
So,
Okay.
so you know, seemed like there was a lot of discussion over various issues during the year. I thought there'd be some more interest in the elective offices, but
Maybe that's why they don't want it.
that could
Too
be
much
yes.
controversy coming up with the building projects and everything else.
It is, and it's time consuming, and you know, with so many families with both spouses working, it's difficult to commit the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the town meeting right now, I think we're up to 47 articles.
That's a lot.
Yes, 5 of them are to do with senior housing. So that'll probably, I assume, will be taken up at once. There'll be nothing much on the state hospital other than some requests for additional consulting services, funds for additional consulting services. There is an article to revise the lease law.
Oh, really? I didn't know that one.
Yes, yeah, that.
Which means what?
Well, I don't think it's that comprehensive. I think it, you know, regulates. There's been some contention over the original leash law. That, as I understand it, the wording of it says the dog has to be under control.
Voice control or on leash.
Yes,
That's what I'm remembering anyway.
but
It's back when I was on the warrant committee, I think.
So the interpretation of that is you don't have to have the dog on leash if the dog's under control.
That's what I thought we passed before, the voice control.
And some people have said, well, that's fine until the dog under your control sees another dog or sees a raccoon or a coyote or something and takes off. And so some people have been frightened by dogs coming after them. And then I know there's been some concern about a lot of professional dog walkers coming into town and whether they should be registered or licensed or have to pay a fee, you know, especially.
That was a very contentious article when it passed initially.
I understand.
I remember at the warrant hearing, somebody stood up and said, leash my grandmother, but don't leash my dog. I still remember that line.
I hope his grandmother wasn't listening. She would probably leash him or lash him, maybe. That'd be a better way to do it. Anyhow, there's the other concern about people not picking up after their dogs. You know, it's the height of laziness, I think, in that situation. So all of those things, but I'm not. It goes on for quite at length, and a lot of it is supposed to clarify what the leash law means and what you can do, what you can't do. So there was talk. John Thompson from the hospital committee, and they also set up a dog or animal control committee to look into these things, and they were talking about having areas where dogs could run off leash, and I don't think they've designated any areas for that, so there shouldn't be any areas. Some towns, I think they have certain areas where you can let your dog off leash and let them run for exercise, but anyhow, that will be an issue. there's the 3 building projects. But anyhow, there are 3 articles pertaining to requests for funding connection with either new buildings or addition to buildings.
You want to tell us about those?
Sure. One of them is for a 3,000 square foot addition to the Council on Aging. They're looking to hire a project manager and architect to do preliminary plans for a 3,000 square foot addition.
And where would they put it?
It goes down the far end, around where the flagpole is, I believe, down that end.
Okay.
So, and I think it's like 3 classrooms, and there were some other spaces in there. Then there's a Park and Rec has an article in to hire a project manager and architect to do a preliminary for a new Park and Rec building, and I believe they're looking at the state hospital.
To be put on the hospital site itself?
On the Sledding Hill,
Okay,
I think is where there was 12 acres designated for some sort of recreational use or non-agricultural use on the site. So,
I still loved it as a Sledding Hill. My gosh, that was fun.
yeah,
To bring the kids up there, oh my Lord.
yeah. It still got very heavy usage.
I
when there's snow.
haven't out of kids anymore, but my kids used it a lot.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's good. You know, the kids don't get it outdoors as much in the winter, so it's good when they have places like that to
Absolutely.
go to and work up a good sweat.
Mhm.
So,
But it's just plain fun.
yeah, yeah,
Screaming, yelling, hollering fun.
yeah. And they sleep well those nights.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
No idea of the
that-
price tag?
Now, they had preliminary estimates that range, I think they're talking somewhere around $8 to $10 million for that. But they're not really sure. At one point, they were talking about an indoor soccer field, and that was going to bring the price up to 20 million, I think, or close to 20 million, but they've dropped that. So it's brought the price down considerably, but and the third one is the Dale Street School feasibility study. The Medfield was approved for a school building assistance project, at least the preliminary phase, to do a feasibility study to see if it was necessary, what the cost would be, where the best location was, and et cetera, et cetera. And that originally was proposed at 1.5 million, but they think because there'll be a lot of competition from firms to do the study, that they can get the price down, so they're going to be looking for $1 million, and that will be an override. There's a very interesting situation has come up over which type of override. There is a provision that you can do put the money in a dedicated stabilization fund.
Yeah, I heard that on the meeting the other night. I was watching the meeting. I was very surprised. Never heard of that before.
Yeah, well, it's fairly new. Actually, some of it's new. Some of it came about as a result of Governor Baker's Municipal Modernization Act.
Okay.
That made it possible. So the fear was that if you set something up like that, it could be diverted to other uses. And, you know, we hired a facilities manager last year, Jerry McCarty, and he came up with a 20-year master plan for renovating and upgrading the town buildings, and apparently they need a lot of maintenance work. There's been a lot of neglected maintenance, particularly in the schools.
Because wasn't it about maybe 15 years ago, or maybe even a little more, that the selectmen were given a tour of the Dale Street School. And I still remember, I had been in the school, my kids had all gone to that school, I'd been up and down, in and out. But when I went down to the basement and saw some of the boiler and all the mechanisms that run the building, I was appalled at the condition. I was absolutely appalled.
Yeah.
And I don't mean out of that current school committee, it was from people years back that let it go.
Well, and as we talked about earlier, there was an incentive built in to the school building assistance programs not to maintain your schools. Because if you didn't maintain your schools, let them fall apart, then you could go to this school building, Mass School Building Bureau, as it was called then, and they would essentially build you a new school.
Some logic there that leaves me.
Well, it ended up building them a $8 billion backlog of projects, and that's when they finally changed and went to an authority. And one of the bad parts of it was we used to get 63% of the funding for a new school building. Now we've dropped down to, believe it or not, 39.84%. So I guess everybody says, well, why don't you round to 40? We think they would have rounded to 40 if they left it at 39.84. People ought to know it's 39.84. It's so as a result, there's a lot of work, a lot of roofs, leaky boilers, failed water heaters.
I had lunch today with two women who had been graduates of the Dale Street School, and that was their favorite building. They said of all the school buildings that they were in, they loved it. They liked that the most.
I think to me it's the most attractive architecturally, except for the new addition back, because it's so hot looking.
Yeah.
It's kind of.
But they liked the fact that there was the memorial school was there behind, and you could share the playing fields. And one of the girls said it was so nice. One of the women actually said it was so nice to look out the window and see the little kids.
Yes.
Kindergarten and first graders.
You could walk down to Lord's after school.
Yep.
So, that is the third. Now, there's also an article in to to establish a bylaw defining the duties of the Permanent Planning and Building Committee.
Okay.
And it would require that any project over, I think, $1 million or $1.5 million would have to be submitted to them for review, and they would prepare a report and submit it to the Board of Selectmen to make a decision as to how to proceed. But you couldn't just put an article in. Another board or committee couldn't put an article in the town meeting warrant.
Really?
For a building project.
So Park and Rec or School would have to go to the building committee first?
Would have to go to the building committee. I think actually they would go to the Board of Selectmen, the Selectmen would refer it to the building committee. It kind of makes sense, I know. I think if you look at the way the public safety building turned out with money left over and a good bid price, and it was completed on time, I think that, and we're lucky to have the talented people we have had on that committee. So, but if that passes, and at this town meeting, if these projects are not approved, that will be a requirement in the future.
You have to go back to the beginning then.
Yes, yeah. So it's the estimated cost for the replacement for what they're talking about is combining the Dale Street and Wheelock schools into a single school, or maybe two schools with core facilities. The cost of that, renovating the Wheelock and building a new Dale adjacent to the Wheelock, they're estimating to be about $50 million. Isn't that unbelievable? I remember we did 3 schools for $56 million, the high school, the middle school, memorial. And everybody thought that was outrageous.
Well, it was at the time.
Yes.
You made a lot of money back then.
And believe it or not, in 2023, the bonds on those 3 school projects will be paid off.
Wow.
As will all the sewer projects that we've done in town, all the sewer extensions. So there's still a couple of small bonds out for maintenance projects at the treatment plant. But
what's the current school population?
$64 question. It depends on how you count them. Whether you, I think the school department uses about 2,650. Their estimate was 2,609. They said that actual numbers enrolled
So a little over 26.
were higher. Yeah, Now, that's counting the pre-kindergarten students
Oh,
as
so
well.
that wouldn't count that.
Well, and that's been part of the discussion. The
Yeah.
town accountant got figures from one side on the Department of Education. It showed a lower figure because it didn't count the
Right, I wouldn't count it either.
pre-kindergarten. And I think it may have counted half-day kindergarten students as half-day or whatever.
Oh,
But
geez.
anyhow, it's somewhere around 25, 26, 2,700. So, it did go down for about 10 years. They're
I know.
projecting now it's going to start going up. And this would be the first year, this current year, that it has gone up if
But
they're,
then they're counting a whole new
figures.
age group, though.
yes, yeah.
So that's,
Yeah, I don't know how long they've been counting them for, though, whether they've been counting them for, when did they start the pre-kindergarten? That goes back a few years,
long
I
after
think,
my
didn't
kids
it?
were in there.
In pre-kindergarten?
I don't think any of my grandkids were either.
No, I don't
don't
think
think
they've
so.
had it that long. I think they had kindergarten, but then kindergarten was half-day, wasn't it?
Yeah, kindergarten was always half day,
And
yeah.
then if they have full-day kindergarten, there was the tuition that had to
Mm-hmm.
be paid, so. But now they have pre-kindergarten, so that does change the numbers around. But anyhow, so those will be coming up, and the Dale Street feasibility study will require an override. And as I said, there's two ways that it could be done. It could be done as a debt exclusion override or as a stabilization fund override. And I actually like the stabilization fund override because it would provide funding down the road for the 20-year capital maintenance plan for the school, and so it would fix the school buildings. And my feeling is if you don't fix the buildings you got, then why would I want to trust you with money for another
For more, that's right.
building? So I think and I think the school committee has addressed that, and the impetus for the facilities maintenance program actually came from the warrant committee, and then the school committee supported it. So, and that's worked very well. I think it's been very successful.
Okay.
We're very lucky to get a guy the caliber of Jerry McCarty to head it up.
Are you
So-
preparing estimates of how our taxes will go up if all these projects go through?
We talked about that. If all the overrides went through, I think the taxes in the normal 2.5% increase, it would probably be about a $1 tax rate increase. Which is tough. I mean, the tax rate this year was 1703. And the average tax bill is about $10,800, which is
Right.
pretty steep.
It is a
So,
lot of money.
Yeah. So, if people want these programs, then they have to be paid for. The worst thing that we can do is fall victim to the Washington syndrome, where you can have it all and you don't have to pay for it. If people want it, they have to understand that it comes with a bill. Unlike the phonies in Washington of both political persuasions, who never talk about how the bills are going to be paid, but are always talking about what new programs or tax cuts or whatever they can do for you that's going to get your vote.
Yeah, the federal debt is scary.
It's pathetic
horrible.
how low it has sunk, and how the public has allowed it to sink so low that they can get away with running up a tab and not ever talking about how the bill's going to be paid. And now the state government is doing the same thing with all these authorities. I think there's about 100 authorities, nearly 100 authorities in the state, and they're all considered separate. So you never see the total debt. I read one article that said Massachusetts has the highest debt
Oh, really?
per capita of any state in the union.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Because I think what they do is they add the debt from the cities and towns, from the authorities, and from the state. And it's pretty sizable when you pile it all up. So, and then we're not funding our long-term liabilities. Medfield is trying to do it, and it's tough with all these other demands for current programs. you know, we're 5.3% funded on our OPEB, retiree health insurance, long-term liability. We were 47 million, we're now down to just under 40 million, I think about 39.8 million. So we're 5.3% funded. Cambridge, which has oodles and oodles of money, is 1% funded. And then there's the pension liability. I remember seeing a figure about a year and a half ago that the Mass Teachers Retirement System funding level was about 52%, which would put it right in line with the city of Chicago or the state of Illinois. Pathetic. Now maybe with the stock market going up, they may have improved somewhat. So, you know, everybody thinks Massachusetts is in wonderful financial shape. It's not true. We have horrendous liabilities, outstanding liabilities, and I think our legislators and state officials need to start talking about it and talking about how they're going to pay for it.
My grandchildren and great-grandchildren may never talk to me when they realize all this. We're dumping it on them.
Well, hopefully they will not be able to talk to you for a long time.
Well, we'll find out. No, but I feel guilty about it. I really do, knowing we're passing that on to new generations.
I always say, why does our generation hate their grandchildren so much?
Because in a way you're saying,
if to leave them behind such a huge tab, so that we could indulge our wants.
You're right.
So, but it's not a very popular opinion, and I probably couldn't get elected dog catcher. So, but I think it needs to be said, and people need to start talking about it and asking their elected officials about how they intend to pay for these things.
Yeah.
But I hope it's not too late. I don't think it is. I think we can always start somewhere and pick up the program, but it means that the people we put in office are going to have to learn how to say no, we can't afford it.
Yeah.
So, in the meantime, we're looking at all the things that Medfield residents would like to see, and the list is considerable too. And it seems like my line these days is, "Sorry, you can't afford it." So, you know, I went to a solid waste or a transfer station committee the other day, and they were talking about having a town run and paid for curbside collection. I said, "Does that mean you're going to close the transfer station?"
Yeah,
They said,
yeah.
"Oh no, people love that." And I said, "Well, you can't afford both."
You can't do it, yeah.
So, and if people want to have curbside collection, they have the option of contracting with a private provider to do that. But and I don't care which way you do it, whether you do curbside or you do transfer station, but you certainly can't do both.
Absolutely.
And I had a bit of a shocker the other day. You know, we went to single stream recycling about four or 5 years ago, I think now.
Yeah, I remember that.
And it's gone over very well. People are very good. We do about 27% of, between what we take to the incinerator and what we recycle through single stream, it's about 27% now we're recycling, which I think is pretty good. However, China recently instituted something called, I believe it's called the China Sword Policy, where they're turning away loads of recycled materials. Now, China used to be the big market for just about everything.
Right.
And they found that they're getting so much contaminated material in with the recycled materials that they don't want them, and they're sending them away. So our price for recycled materials per ton, and that's just, that it doesn't include transportation, it's just for what they're paying us for the materials themselves, was scheduled to go to $24 a ton as of January 1st, 2018. When we got the January bill, it was billed at $50 a ton, so we called And luckily, we awarded a 3-year contract for the recycling. And so we have 1 more year on it. But I talked to one of the Harveys where we take it. It's up in Westboro, the E.J. Harvey, I think it's the name of the company. And they do a very good job. They're an excellent company. And I feel sorry for them. I said, you know, people say, oh, I wouldn't want your job. I said, well, I certainly wouldn't want your job these days. He said the price they're billing out now because of the uncertainty in the market is $70 a ton. So about 4 years ago, when we started, we were paying $10 a ton. Oh, geez. And now we're facing in another year the prospect of perhaps $70 a ton. And people say, why is the transfer station sticker going up? Why is it so expensive? Well, you know, if you're going to go from $10 a ton to $70 a ton, something's got to give.
I know I have a much larger package of recyclables than I do of actual trash or garbage, whatever you want to call it.
And actually at $70 a ton, that would be more per ton than the incinerator. So who knows what will happen next year, whether we'll be ending up doing away with the recycling and just taking it to the incinerator. I hope not, because I think it's a good thing. But the big problem apparently is fiber, because the fiber gets contaminated, and you know, you think of fiber as being clothes and
so what are you talking
whatnot,
about?
but the big fiber is newspaper or paper.
Oh, okay.
So, and you know, if it rains or if people throw garbage or whatever in with their paper, and then that has to be thrown away and it's considered trash. It can't be recycled. So, and that's most of which China is refusing to take. And so it's just stacking up in warehouses all over the place, and they're trying to figure out what to do with it.
Future generations will deal with that one too.
Yeah, other countries do have programs where they take recycled materials, but they're not large enough to handle the volumes that China has been taking. China has gigantic recycling plants, I gather. So I said to somebody the other day, wouldn't it be strange if in a few years we end up taking recycled materials from China, processing them here? So, but that's going to be another issue we're going to have to deal with, and it's another cost. And getting rid of trash is, I'd put the category of more a need than a want. But we'll see. So what else is coming up? State Hospital, everybody wants to know when the town meeting is, special town meeting. And
what's going to
answer
happen?
is, I don't know. A couple of years ago, I used to say, ask me in 10 years and maybe I'll have an answer, but it's certainly difficult. And I got to give credit to Steve Nolan. He has the patience of Job, and he's really been through the ringer on this one. And you know, as many people as there are in town, there's probably more opinions. Some people probably have 2 opinions. So.
Yeah, I could do it. I could solve it easily myself.
Oh, of course.
But if I had to work with you, that would make it harder. If I had to work with somebody else, the more people you add, the harder it gets.
It does.
But one person alone, a dictatorship would be easy.
Yes.
But unfortunately, we don't have that.
As long as I'm the dictator.
No, I like to be the dictator.
You be the dictator, yeah, that figures. But that's like that old line, there's only 2 perfect people in the world, and I'm not so sure about you.
Yep.
So.
No, but it would be easy with a small group, but when you're talking thousands of voters, it's not going to be easy.
And then people get vested in it, you know, with their ideas, and if you don't go along with their ideas, then you're not listening to them. And well, if you listen to 100 people and you get 125 different ideas, you got to pick and choose somewhere, and you're going to anger most of the people because you can only pick 1 or 2 ideas out of all of those.
But I volunteered up there for so long, meeting with the patients regularly, and of course as an EMT I was up there a lot. But I would like it to be a good, happy place. I really would like to have some warmth back in that place. I really would. Some better memories, and there were some
It
good
would,
memories there,
yes.
but there's so much sad.
Yes, yeah.
And I just like to have something nice and warm coming in that place.
And I think one of the saddest things about it is I think a lot of the people that were institutionalized up there were not mentally ill.
They didn't seem to be when we looked at some of the
No.
records.
And I think a lot of it was people didn't have good diagnoses for dementia or Alzheimer's. It wasn't just known as a disease.
Yeah.
So it was categorized as a mental illness. And plus, I think it was easier 100 years ago to get someone committed.
Sure,
You know, if you had
sign them away.
great Aunt Mary and you didn't know what to do with her and you didn't want to keep her at home,
There you go.
have her committed to the state hospital. And, you know, and I think there was a lot of that.
But there were
going
good
on.
people up there too, and it's,
There were good people, and there were people that dedicated their lives to
Mm-hmm.
taking care of those people up there.
so it's in honor of all of them that I really would like to have something good come up there.
Yes, yeah,
I
yeah.
really would.
It is a beautiful spot of land. You know, I remember somebody took a aerial shoot of the state hospital one time.
We did.
Yeah,
Andy and I
think it
did
was-
in our little plane.
They did,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
Might have
And-
been our shots.
And if you get up, you know, a couple of thousand feet, it's quite a
It was
beautiful
gorgeous.
spot. It's right on a bend in the river, Charles River, and
Yep.
it's open fields surrounded by woods, and the buildings look like castles from 2,000 feet in the air.
Right.
So that, but it will get done. I always tell people, you know, when they talk about the Dwight Derby House, and I said, well, and the Lowell Mason House being not in the best shape, although
Right.
they're starting to work on that. They're getting quite a bit done now. But I say, you know, it took 10 years for the Dwight Derby House to get renovated to the point where it was an asset to the town, but it sat there for a long time.
Right.
And I think I caught your cold
I don't have a cold.
or whatever, cough, whatever.
Just have a
yeah.
cough, yeah.
But I remember, and very few people would remember this, but when they tore down St. Edward's Church,
Oh,
and
I
it was
cried.
trying to decide what to do with it, and we didn't have the money at the time to put a gazebo in, and it sat there sort of like a dust bowl for
know.
maybe 8 years.
I was writing for the newspaper back then. I remember
Yeah.
taking the pictures when it went down. I was crying.
Yes.
Because two of
There were a
my
lot-
two youngest children were baptized in that church.
There were a lot of people crying that
Yeah.
day.
So Harry Kelleher was the most upset of anybody that I knew of.
Yeah.
When that came down, he tried so hard.
Well, I remember Tommy Seeley was
Yeah,
crying
he's another
there
one.
too. Yes, because he had gone to school there and had
Yeah.
a lot of memories. So, and then there was Jane Archer,
Mm-hmm.
who they forgot to tell they were tearing the steeple down.
I forgot
And
that.
she was in her office, sitting in her
I
office.
forgot
and-
about that.
Oh, luckily the guy that was operating the crane knew just what he was doing, and
Yeah.
she was fine. But I said, "Whoa!" When you think of what could have happened. So,
Mm-hmm.
I did just hear from Jane the other day. Her little note.
Oh, did you really?
Yes, yes. So she's down in Florida, and hopefully keeping warm. I understand it. I think she spends part of her time in New England and part of her time in Florida. So.
She was a good library director, no question.
Yes, yes, and she was there for years. You know, I think we've had 4 library directors since Jane left. Dan Brassel, we had.
He was good also. I liked him very much.
Yes, we had, of course, Christian Chin just left, and now we have the new director, and there was, the one that went to Gloucester. I just can't think of her name now.
Yeah, I don't go into the library now. I get deliveries from
Yes.
books, so I don't go in. I don't know
yeah.
the staff like I used to.
Oh, well, you know, she was there for 5 or 6 years, and I know her name is, I just can't think of her right now.
Okay.
I'll think of it by the end of the show and shout it out. And they've all been good in their own way. I think the library board of directors has done a good job in hiring directors. They all
Good.
seem to have a different attitude, but they all seem to, or a different emphasis rather than attitude, but they all seem to in their own way, improved the library operations. So,
Good.
and I'm sure the new director will do the same.
Well, I hope so.
Okay, what else are we dealing with? Affordable housing. The Borelli's first project is now occupied on North Street.
I'm trying to think what number it was, 67?
Or
Something like that.
67 or
Something in there.
75 or something.
Okay.
And then his other one has been approved. The house next door that was where was it Gretchen Fraunberger and Dick had his dental office there.
Seymour Sachs's office was in there. He was an obstetrician for my two
Okay.
youngest boys.
Yeah.
He was in that building too.
So that will be done, and he did a beautiful job renovating the old.
Right.
Some people call it the bike shop, some people call it Victoria Manor, you call it the
The
knitting store.
knitting
Yes,
store.
and then Richard called it the Jacob Cushman House, so
Okay,
take
yeah.
your pick. So, and the Affordable Housing Trust met the other night with Mr. Kelly, who was one of the proponents of the 200-unit development at Dale that got turned down by the state.
Yeah,
And
we're working on it. I'm a member of the trust.
that's right.
And we
are,
divvied
yes,
up
yeah.
the different people that Mr. Kelly gave for references.
Oh, okay.
So I
yeah.
sent an email out to the one to whom I was delegated. Sent the email out last night. I called him this morning. He said, "Oh, I already got your email." He said, "I was going to give you a call." So we talked for about an hour.
Oh, good.
And I was glad he was that open. He said,
Good.
"Feel free to pass his name on to anybody else."
Good.
But it's good things to do.
Yeah, and you know, it's good that they've been willing to compromise, and quite a big compromise. They went from 200 units down to 36, I guess
Yeah,
they're talking about now.
Yeah.
So
And there was another unit, another group in between, another mid-size property that they talked about for a while too.
well, there's another one they're talking up near the Goddard School. I think 16
I know,
units.
but another
yeah,
one that
yeah.
Mr. Kelly's project was going to. It went from 196 to 96, and then
That's
back
right,
down
he
to
did.
this one.
Yes, yeah.
So there's
yeah.
3 different
well,
ones.
and then he had 25 condos or something across the street that he dropped. So,
Right.
Which I think was a smart move on his part.
So how many are in the new list?
For that particular, I believe it's 36.
Yeah.
So
And they're mixed, he said.
they're mixed. I think there's
Rental, home
12,
ownership, some low
and
income.
I think the home ownership, they were trying to steer towards the 55 and older to address some of the housing, senior housing desires. So there is a questionnaire that will be going out to every senior household in town. And a couple of residents of the town, including one I believe with ties to the Thompson family,
Yes.
have been working on it, and it will try to gauge the attitude of the seniors in Medfield towards the need for affordable senior house, moderately priced affordable senior housing.
Because my daughter Barbara Gibbs is one of the 2 that worked on that project.
Yes.
And I was very careful. I never discussed it with her at all. Figure
Yeah.
since I'm on several committees that are involved, I would just keep my mouth
Well, she was
closed.
at the selectmen's meeting
I saw her.
last night and talking about, I guess initially they're going to mail them out to all the people who responded to the Senior Housing Study Committee questionnaire, and then later on they will send it to all the rest of the senior households in town.
Because most of them
And,
didn't respond before.
yeah, I think they,
I think we only had 200 or 300 people that responded.
yes, yeah.
It's not a very
And I
good
think,
sample.
what are there, about 1,600 senior households in town, so, which Roberta was there, and she said, I think it's gone up from like 1,100 to 1,600 households, so there is
Quite a few.
an increase in, for a while everybody thought senior population was going to disappear, and it seems like it's increasing.
We're still here.
Yes, yeah. Well, and I've noticed a trend. I think there are you see a lot of seniors around out walking and at sporting events and in the library and whatnot, and in the restaurants. And I think a lot of people have moved to the area to be closer to their children, whether their children live in Medfield or one of the surrounding towns. So I think there's been a trend along those lines. And I think Medfield now with a nice downtown, I mean, I haven't heard anyone call Medfield Deadfield in a few
Been a
years
long
now.
time.
15 years ago, that's all they called it. And there wasn't much to do downtown. So, but now, you know, people have places to go to. There's several restaurants, there's a library, there's stores, shops. You got Brothers is a fun place to go to. The post office is there, sort of an anchor tenant. Although the postage rates went up a penny January 28th.
Oh,
They're
that's right.
They're 50 cents now.
That's right.
So I think the senior population is increasing, and I think sometimes the seniors want to get away from the hustle and bustle of the city, especially if they work there all their lives. So Medfield's got a small town, still got a small town atmosphere, and people do say hello to you when you walk down the street for the most part. And so I think it is an attractive place for seniors to live. So.
It's an attractive place for anybody to live.
Yes, yeah. If only it weren't so expensive, I guess.
But I would hate to be just a senior enclave, because one of the best things in the world is walking down the street and hearing kids yell and play and bikes. I like it. And I think even seniors like me need to have the younger people around. That's why I like it very much.
And I would hate to see it as just a family-only enclave. You know, I think the kids can learn an awful lot from seniors, the wisdom and the patience of seniors that would serve our younger people in good stead if they were able to take advantage of it. But I think there's been sort of a fear line created by some of these incidents that get reported, you know, and it makes kids afraid to talk to adults, so, which is a shame. But I understand why it has come to this, but I think it's a sad commentary on our times. So.
It is. You have any good news this month?
Oh, I thought we had plenty. All these things, there are positive overtones to everything we've been talking about. I said Medfield is no longer called Medfield.
Okay.
Isn't that good news? Our veterans agent has started and is hard at work. He's speaking to the Legion this week. He's going to be speaking to the seniors. He's going to be available in Town Hall Tuesday mornings and Thursday afternoons. He's going to be at the senior center as often as he can. Anyone who wants to see him in Walpole, his office in Walpole is open for anyone from Medfield to go to. And he'll have telephone numbers or emails where you can leave messages for him to get in touch with it. So,
what's his name?
John Cogan.
Okay.
But it's Jon, it's no H in it,
Okay.
so, and it's Cogan. So, and he's a veteran himself. He was, I believe he's retired from the service. He was in there for, I think, 20-some years. So he's still relatively young, though, compared to us. So.
Speak for yourself.
But that's getting easier every year to be young relative to us. We hired a new mechanic in the town garage, and Mo Goulet, our public works director, is hoping that when he gets his new equipment vehicle GIS program going, that he'll be able to, they have 2 mechanics now in the town garage, he'll be able to repair a lot of the town vehicles at the town garage instead of sending them out for repairs.
Oh, good.
They won't be able to do everything. For example, the ambulance is highly specialized in some of the fire trucks, but a lot of the police cruisers and the smaller fire trucks and DPW trucks, council on aging vehicles. So that'll be a good thing for the town. And I guess that's probably about enough. We must have used up our time already, I would think. Huh?
So when you come back, it'll be right around election time,
That's right.
which for the people at home is the last Monday of the month,
Yes.
and the election will be held at the center.
Center, and the polls are open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m.
That's the usual.
Yes, yeah.
But hope people go. If you don't go and vote, then you can't complain.
Yes. By the way, the override questions will not be on the ballot for the town election.
Right.
There will be a special election after the town meeting to address whatever overrides get put on.
If they pass at town meeting.
Yes. I think the override question, people think town meeting votes an override. It doesn't. The voters vote an override at an election. So you can still have a override question on the ballot even if the article doesn't pass the town meeting, because they're different natured, and if you already scheduled it, it may be too late to cancel it. So, but yeah, that will be critical, and then hopefully in the not too distant future there'll be some recommendations on the state hospital that will be
I hope so, too.
up for discussion, and I hope something can be done up there. I hope with all the citizen input they've had, that now the committee is settling down to work among themselves and narrow the focus down to just themselves, which is an important next step, I think. No one can say they didn't have the opportunity to give their opinion.
I know.
So there was countless meetings and presentations and whatnot. So, but not everybody can win. If as we talked about earlier, there has to be a narrow plan that they come up with, and it will not be what most people want to see, but it will be what's workable, hopefully, up there. So,
I hope it's something that works for the majority. That's all we can ask for.
yes. By the way, for people who did follow the state hospital closely, the Mary Beth Clancy is retired.
Oh, did she?
About a week and a half ago.
She was good to work with.
She was the DCAM project manager for the state hospital, and spent a lot of time out here. So time marches on, huh?
So March is on because March is almost here.
That's right. Yes, that's right.
March is almost here.
And the next time we meet, it will be spring.
Let us hope. As beautiful as today is.
Yes, and let's hope we don't get an April Fool's storm.
It's
already enough we have April Fool's and Easter on the same day.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot that.
Yeah.
That's a good way to end the meeting tonight.
Yes.
Okay, well, you folks at home, thank you so much for watching Medfield TV. I hope you'll tune in again. And remember, the regular programs on all channels. I hope you'll keep watching and learn what's going on in Medfield. And I thank Mike Sullivan once again for being our visitor. Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me, putting up with my ramblings.
No, you weren't rambling.